Wars. This is Two Nerds and a Joke with Robert and Ernie.
Buddy Hot Girl voice. This is Two Nerds and a Joke with Robert and Ernie. I'm Ernie.
And I am the ever sports loving Robert here, playing on first base with Ernie on second and Jason on third. I came up with that one. I thought that was good. What do you think, Ernie? You think it's good, right?
That was pretty good. A little bit of a stretch. Pretty good.
We have a friend back, and we love it. We have Jason back. And a friend of the podcast. And I will say this, I'm excited about today's conversation because we know it's around the corner. We know it's coming. And it's perfect timing to really talk about this. And we're here with Jason today, our sports expert, if you will, our sports therapy expert. And we're here today to talk about one of our characters that we both love and hate, which of course is KYLO Ren.
Yes, I love KYLO Ren. He's one of the most nuanced characters in all of Star Wars. Oftentimes characters are just good guys or they're just bad guys. But what is KYLO Ren? That is hard to say. And that's what I like about him.
Yeah, and it's kind of a funny thing because you look at most of the characters in Star Wars and you're pretty clearly defined. I mean, yeah, there's a moment here or there with Darth Vader where he kind of sees like he's redeemable here and there. You really don't see anything like Han Solo. I mean, yeah, he's a scoundrel, but he's not a bad guy. Right. But KYLO, he's either an angsty teenager or he's like in this, in the second movie, totally going to the dark side. I mean, but yet not completely. He's still redeemable.
Right, exactly. He's very human. Even like you said with Han Solo, he started out as like a scoundrel, and he's at this real, in the first movie or episode 4, he's in this like really shady bar where only bad people go. But then you get to know him, and other than him shooting first, and he doesn't really he's just. There's nothing really bad about him other than he smuggles things, and then even then, like he helps the rebellion. He really is much more human and very, very nuanced, and he has good sides and bad sides, and I really appreciate that about the character.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting thing to kind of watch him also kind of evolve from where he started to where he kind of ended up. Like you see the betrayal, you see him kind of this weird relationship thing. I mean, give me some insight into what you feel is going on with that, because that's kind of wonky, right?
Sure. Well, oh man, it's so hard to choose where to start with KYLO Ren or Ben Solo or whatever. Yeah, because there's just so much going on.
Well, here's a good starting point. Here, take it from here. The thing that defines him turning, at least in the movie, is that betrayal scene that we get the two different story versions of. Right? We get the story of what Mark Hamill's character Luke says happened, and then we get the story of what KYLO Ren says happens.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of that moment there is, was Luke really looking to kill him? Was it he got a moment of weakness? I mean, you're talking, and you got to talk about it from a familiar perspective too. This isn't some stranger. This is a family member.
Right.
I think, would you consider that like the defining moment that makes him him?
It's a really important moment. That's one where he was really kind of teetering on that edge, you could say. He had already been influenced by Snoke. He was I don't know if he was fully on considering going to the dark side, but that was part of it. He was being seduced by Snoke, and then and then when he sees Luke, his uncle, who is not only just his uncle, but is kind of like considered the most reputable, the best, like the most like light side good guy person in the galaxy. Luke says it in the Last Jedi that he was Luke Skywalker, the legend. So Luke was someone that everybody looks up to, everybody trusts, everybody thinks that Luke is just pure good. So if because Luke said he was bad, Luke tried to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
If you Yeah, if you go from an angle of that, of just you starting out your relationship, I guess you could call it, with that scenario where it's really just kind of a situation of you almost killed your own family member. You
mhm,
know, where do you go from there? Because it's like now he's kind of got this weird thing going with Ray,
mhm,
and he's taking the next step with that and really turning over to the dark side. And it's like, what do you do? What do you do at that point with the
mhm,
relationship? He's obviously Luke's going to become a Force ghost. We know that. We're that's no kidding.
mhm,
But does he fall into the scenario of he's going to go into the relationship further with Ray? Are they going to become a thing? I mean,
mm,
if you go by the trailers, are they going to be on the same side? Is it just a dream? What does it mean for Jedi's in general of what he's trying to be? Because you got to kind of look to the future, because that next movie is coming out and not that long in the future, and it's like,
right,
this is going to be interesting. It's definitely, there's a lot of directions they can go in.
right, right. And then the movie, the title is Rise of Skywalker. So what does that mean? Is Kylo Ren the Skywalker? Is Luke's Force ghost? Is that the Skywalker? Is somebody else some Skywalker that we don't even know about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you got, and then the sad part of the whole thing, of course, is that Leia's not going to be able to be the Rise of the Skywalker. She's no longer going to be in the
Mm,
movies, so that's going to be a depressing end. But
right.
yeah, it's a very interesting family dynamic. So, what in your mind is the part that makes Kylo Ren really kind of turn away from his family in such a way? I mean, he
Mhm,
kills his father.
mhm,
His own uncle tries to kill him.
mhm,
I couldn't see. I mean, his mother Leia is just beside herself in general. I
mhm,
mean, she kind of knows he's lost, so
mhm.
he's ostracized his entire family by this point.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, what kind of value? And I know it's because of the influence of others, and we always talk about in real life, not in movies, the influence of others in our story to
Mhm.
affect how our relationships with our family goes. But do you feel that he kind of had that from the beginning? That was kind of his path because of who he was or how powerful he was. That was kind of a key piece.
I think so. I think so. Uh, So what we know about Kylo Ren or Ben Solo, what we know about him is that he's extremely powerful. He's one of the most powerful people in the galaxy. Rey seems to be his equal, but other than that, there was Snoke, who's probably dead. He overpowered Luke at a very young age, so we know he's very powerful, and he's very conflicted inside. Like, is he part of the light side? Is he part of the dark side? Is he somewhere in the middle? Where does he belong? And a lot of that seems to go back to his childhood experience, and his that's the psychologist in me coming out, and his experience in early life with his family. And even in the Last Jedi, we see that those early experiences and the impression that his family left on him is still really strong. We even see that in the Force Awakens when he talks to Rey and says, he would have disappointed you. As far as Han Solo and having him as a father figure. And if we go back and we look at Ben's upbringing and who influenced him, the people who weigh really heavily in his mind are his grandpa, Darth Vader. So
Right.
yeah, so Darth Vader, one of the most infamous people in the galaxy. He was really powerful. He destroyed all the Jedi pretty much. He ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, or at least as he was the second in command. And so that's Ben's grandpa. That's who he thinks of as like part of his ancestry. And then we have Uncle Luke, who beat Darth Vader and ushered in this new age of the Republic, and he was developing a new age of Jedi, and Luke was trained by Yoda, one of the greatest Jedi masters of all time, and he was trained by Obi-Wan, who is also one of the greatest, and then so that's his uncle, and then his dad, didn't have the Force, but was a scoundrel and one of the best smugglers, or at least that's what we're led to believe. Everybody knows him. He was super charming. He's just like this really big personality. He was a general in the rebellion, I believe, and all that stuff. And his
And I
Go ahead.
think if you follow the story closely,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of implies he wasn't always around.
Right. Yeah, that's what Kylo alludes to. He feels like he wasn't there. Han even feels guilty, and he kind of alludes to him feeling like he should have been there more, should have done a better job. Han feels like he failed him. He failed Ben. Um, so that's another really big presence in Kylo's upbringing. And then as I was kind of rewatching the movies, something that really stood out to me is Kylo really emphasizes the importance of grandpa, uncle, and dad, but then never mentions mom. And
Huh.
yeah, and mom is she's a princess and she's a general, and she's sort of the face of the rebellion. She's she had it together at a very young age. She was always confident, she was always assertive, she was always all that stuff. And why doesn't Kylo ever even talk about mom, and he doesn't even seem to think about her except for when he's about to kill her, but then decides not to. And I kind of wonder if maybe he doesn't think about her not because he doesn't care about her, but because it hurts too much. So what we know is that mom, or Princess Leia, General Leia, was afraid of Ben. She was afraid of how strong he was going to be, and if he was going to be like Grandpa. So she sent him away to be with Luke, who then almost killed Ben. So I'm wondering if there's really like a really deep trauma there where Ben feels rejected by his mom, and it hurts so much that he doesn't even think about her, and he just completely blames his dad, and he blames his uncle, and he looks up to Grandpa, who was a villain. So I think that could be a really important piece of just Kylo Ren's psychology that could go unnoticed pretty easily.
Well, sorry about that, guys. I was having some technical difficulty. I wanted to when you started talking about like his whole identity, going back and I
Mhm,
rewatched the movies. What I took
mhm,
from the first movie was when we were introduced to him. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that
mhm,
Han and Leia decided to name him Ben after Obi Wan,
mhm,
and I
mhm,
think that maybe as a young um, and maybe you might be able to explain this because you may see this in sports where like you probably have like a father who was probably really good at football and he has a
mhm,
son and he wants his son to like follow in his footsteps, like carry on the name, like it's the exact same name. A player that
mhm,
comes to mind to me is like a Ken Norton. His dad was
mhm,
a world famous, heavyweight boxer, fought against
mhm,
Ali and the greats of boxing,
mhm,
and now he's a football player and he has to like kind of carry that mantle.
mhm,
I guess like in that first movie you could kind of see that disassociation because to me I still think Obi-Wan Kenobi was the greatest Jedi Knight of all. Okay, and that's
right.
the way I look at it. I mean he saw his master fall to Darth Maul
Mhm,
and he took on Darth Maul like hand to hand, like in probably one of the most epic
mhm,
fights ever, and won.
right,
And then he goes
right.
on and he single-handedly controls. He's the I think he was like the head general of the clone army, if I'm not mistaken. So
Could be.
he was like at the tip of the spear, like fighting all these wars against these droids
Hmm.
and leading his troops, like I guess through his own confidence and
Hmm.
bravado. Like he never seemed to
Hmm.
be shooken up in that second movie at anything. And then in the third movie, he takes on his own pupil at the height of his power and beats him, but doesn't finish
Hmm.
him. And I think that maybe knowing all that, what do you think? What do you think that posed to a young Ben Solo? I'm not going to refer to him as Kylo Ren until like I come up with my next point.
Sure. Wow, yeah, that is a great insight that I completely missed. Because in my mind, it was he was just named just a little bit of a meta here, but in my mind, he was named Ben because just Obi-Wan is cool, so then you gotta name him Ben, and Luke didn't have a son. But the way you just described it, like that makes perfect sense. And if we look at Kylo Ren, or excuse me, Ben, one of the things he really struggles with is his identity. Who am I? Am I am I dark side? Am I light side? What? Am I Vader? Am I a Skywalker? And he's surrounded by the greatest of all time. He's surrounded by the goats. His grandpa was one of the greatest. His uncle was one of the
Exactly.
greatest.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And then he's named after someone who's arguably also the greatest. So he's always um, he's always kind of swinging back and forth between I'm the greatest, I can't be stopped, versus I'm a failure. I feel very small. I'll never be as good as Darth Vader. I'll never be as powerful as Luke. I can't beat Luke. Like all that stuff. So that's a great insight. That's like another way that he was expected to be the best and then kind of set up to fail. So yeah, that's a great insight.
Well, yeah, and also the other point of it was I was thinking like if it wasn't for
Hmm.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, like Han and Leia
Hmm.
don't meet, right? So you have
Right.
that other side of it as well.
Hmm.
And the fact that, the way Ben ended his physical life was to
Hmm.
ensure that, his own like person he's fighting, his own pupil's son
Hmm.
could escape.
Yeah.
So he sacrifices himself for the Skywalker family.
Right.
And you kind of think of like this is all heaped on a very young child who's given probably
Hmm.
like I couldn't imagine having like the force and being able to manipulate things because in the first
Hmm.
5 minutes of the Force Awakens you see him like stop a bullet in midair pretty much
Hmm.
and hold it there with
Hmm.
no effort.
Right.
And then he goes in and he's pulling memories out of people's mind at the same time. So
Hmm.
it, like you said, it's that whole identity. I'm just wondering, do you think maybe his flaws, which are slowly exposed throughout the Force Awakens, when he is
Hmm.
confronted by his father, do you think it was hatred toward his father, or do you think it was kind of like a love that wasn't returned?
Okay. Yeah. I don't really think it was hatred. I think it's more the second part, more the love that wasn't returned. I think Ben felt rejected. His parents feared him. They're afraid that he was going to turn out to be just like Darth Vader, just like Anakin. He was going to turn to the dark side, and then he kind of it like he felt rejected, and then he went to go fulfill their expectations about him, turning to the dark side. Um, and when I see that scene where he kills his father, I don't see hatred. I see um, desperation. I see sadness. I see a lot of like inner pain, inner turmoil. He 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 does again. He doesn't know if he's good or if he's bad, and he thinks that if he kills his dad, then he can finally be fully bad or fully dark side, and then once he's fully dark side, then he'll finally be enough. Like that's what he thinks. Like he's not he's not good enough if he tries to be a good guy like Luke Skywalker. He's not good enough if he tries to be Obi-Wan, but maybe he can be Darth Vader. And if he kills his dad, then he'll be fully dark side, and then he'll finally be enough, and he'll prove his worth to himself.
Well, I also noticed when he was making his transformation, Snoke referred to him as Kylo of the Knights of Ren. You know,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like trying to disassociate himself from Ben.
Right.
And I, like you said, like that whole, like that instant that had happened, and Han Solo falls,
Mm-hmm.
and he's standing on the gangplank. Uh, Chewbacca clearly could have wasted him right there.
Yeah.
I mean, he had him dead to
Yeah.
rights, but instead
Mm-hmm.
he went for the wound shot.
Mm-hmm.
And just to show, once again, people on the internet and people I've spoken to say that Kylo Ren is no Darth Vader. Like he's like he like there's like he's not powerful enough. But he took that shot from Chewie's blaster,
Right.
and all he did was just fall to one knee.
Right.
So I'm like,
Right.
he's, and I can kind of see like, oh my gosh, he's slowly becoming his grandfather, like a piece at a
Mm-hmm.
time. Like things are getting hacked off of him, like pieces of like Ben are getting put
Right.
away. And like you said, when he was quote unquote seduced by Snoke, I think maybe Snoke probably put that in his head in the first movie, anyways, of how powerful he is and how much more he
Mm-hmm.
is like Vader than he is of Solo. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes any sense. I don't know where you stand on that.
Hmm. Well, I also want to comment on the part where he gets shot. I completely agree. And just before that, they show, I can't remember if it was Han or Chewie, but they show uh, uh, someone using the crossbow and just blowing all kinds of stuff up, and they're really like satisfied, like, whoa, yeah, this is cool. This crossbow is really powerful. And then Chewie shoots Kylo with it, and then like you said, he just falls to one knee, and then he gets up and then keeps fighting. So when he has that battle with Rey and with Finn, um, you you can say, oh, he should have been able to beat Rey really easily, but he just got shot with that really powerful gun. You can see he's bleeding out, and there's all kinds of blood falling to the snow, and he just killed his dad, so he's in emotional turmoil, and he's also not really trying to kill Finn or to kill Rey. I think he could have if he wanted to, or at least Finn for sure, maybe not Rey, but he could have killed
Yeah,
him if he wanted
Finn was no match for him. You're right.
yeah, yeah. So that's that. The outcome of that battle where he gets beat by Rey isn't an indication of Kylo not being strong enough. It's just Kylo went through all of this stuff, and then he was trying to not kill Rey. He was trying to seduce her to the dark side. So I do agree that Kylo is super powerful, and given enough time, he probably would be just as powerful as Vader. But what was the second part of your question?
The second part was going into the second movie, where it
Mm,
seems as though he's further being deconstructed by Snoke, right? Like his
mm,
personality.
yeah.
He basically comes into the throne room with Snoke and his Imperial guards,
Hmm.
and he's talking to him, and he goes, "Take off that ridiculous mask. Are you just a
Right.
boy in a mask?" He's
Hmm.
like really like hammering home, like you are Kylo Ren. You're not Ben Solo. You're a
Hmm.
product of what I created. Do you kind of
Right.
get that assumption of like, once again, like I'm trying to find, like Kylo's trying to find somebody to admire. He's trying to seek guidance from his grandfather who's passed away.
Hmm.
Snoke, who I guess has now become his father. I mean, do you kind of
Right.
get that sense there?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. It's this abusive relationship. It's this, where Snoke he's the mentor, he's the father figure. He's like the abusive stepdad. He tells Kylo, you know, in some situations he says, "You're great. You're powerful. You're the heir to Darth Vader. You're this and that." And then in other situations where he's not happy, he says, "Take that ridiculous mask off," and you were bested by a young girl, and all that stuff. And he even lets Kylo know what game he's playing when Hux walks out of Snoke's chamber or room or whatever. He says um, something like a cur can be really useful if you manipulate their weaknesses to your advantage, something like that. So that's the same game that he's playing with Kylo, where he pumps up Kylo and tells him he's great. When Kylo's doing the things he wants to, he he kind of talks down to him and says these disparaging things when Kylo doesn't do things he wants, and then he's also manipulating him in the background and connecting him to Rey so that he can fall right into Snoke's trap. So um, so yeah, they have this like abusive stepdad relationship.
Yeah, totally sees that. Totally see that. Well, we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and I want to do because we're gonna wrap this up here shortly. But I want to do one last thing with Kylo Ren, and I want to see what our predictions are going to be for what's going to happen with his story arc for him in the next and final ever, well, at least for another couple of years, movie. So, want to thank you guys real quick. And now our sponsor, of course, as always, is Anchor FM, and we love them for having us be able to host all this fun stuff. And we'll be right back after this quick commercial break. And Ernie, that's you.
Seamless transition.
And we come back, and oh my God, there's so much to unpack with Kylo, I think. I mean, you've really gone into all the angles, the failing angle, his desperation to be the best, and just the sheer panic that people don't really seem to get these days in movies is the depth of the character that's trying to portray it, you know? What do you see based on the historical evidence so far will be his next set of actions? Is he going to turn? Is he going to become an asset? Is he going to just stick to where he's at? Where do you think he's going next?
Oh man, that is hard. I think he seems to really value his relationship with Rey. What they might have different views on what that relationship means. Like Rey sees it differently than he sees it, but um, saving Rey was one of the only times in the two movies where he's not conflicted anymore. And Snoke even says it. He says something like, "Where there was once conflict, now there's certainty," something like that. Where there was once weakness, there was now strength. And then Kylo even says, like right before he kills Snoke, when you think he's going to kill Rey, he says, "I know what I have to do." And then and then he kills Snoke, and then Kylo had, from like a performance perspective, Kylo has his best performance of the two movies. Like Kylo and Rey team up,
Agreed.
and they beat yeah,
Agreed.
they beat those red space samurais. And a lot of times, Kylo, other than that moment, Kylo's kind of coming up short in a lot of different situations. So that's one of his only like real clean victories, and a lot of that goes back to just the focus and the like no longer being conflicted, just having like knowing what he values, knowing what's important. He values Rey, her life, what their sort of I get long distance relationship. So he's basing his actions off of his values, and then that's when athletes perform their best, when they base their decisions off of their values, when they know why they're doing what they're doing, why they're competing, why they're committed and dedicating themselves to their sport. So that's when Rey, or that's when Kylo did his best. So if I think about that, I would hope, my hope for Kylo would be that since that's what he knows he cares about, he acts off of that, and he decides to maybe go back to the light side, or maybe find some kind of gray area where it's not unbalanced and it's not just light or it's not dark, not just dark, and maybe you know he finds some kind of healthy relationship with Rey, or maybe they go off together and both be dark side. But that's what Kylo cares about. So hopefully he would act off of that. But man, anything could happen. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up was kind of relating it to sports in a way. Like
Hmm.
my view of watching Kylo, I guess, interact with Rey in that scene. Rey was never classically trained like Kylo was. Kylo had
Hmm.
all the benefits. He was trained by the best, quote unquote. Rey grew up on a junk planet defending herself. So that's how she learned
Right.
to fight.
Hmm.
However, she is probably as close to his equal, and I was wondering if that is kind of like in sports where like you have that guy who basically like a Grant Hill.
Protege.
Yeah, like he was basically like, look, my dad was a famous, Dallas Cowboy,
Hmm.
Drew Hill, and he won championships. He sent me to the best school. He sent me to Duke to learn
Hmm.
by the best coaches in basketball, so I know how to do this.
Hmm.
And then you see this kid who grew up from the inner cities, who didn't get the luxury
Right.
of that training, and just takes over the NBA.
Right. Right.
LeBron, like he didn't have the best coaches. He didn't come from like a
Hmm.
strong lineage of athletes. It was just something like he was born with it, and that's kind of like the way I kind of see Kylo and Rey. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts on that? Do you think maybe like he's seeing it as like it's all this raw, untapped power here that maybe I could
Hmm.
use, or is it more like
Hmm.
we could team up and like win this together type deal?
Mm. I I'm sure if we could get inside his head, it would be a little bit of both, where he's thinking like I'll, well he did actually say like I'll be your teacher, uh, and he might have said like we can rule the galaxy together or something like that. So I think he is thinking uh, that he could be her teacher, that he can sort of use her raw, untapped power. But then also, he does like really value their relationship, and he wants them to, uh, have some kind of relationship together. That she's. Uh, she's probably the only one of the few people in the galaxy who can understand him, because when you have that much power, people can't relate to that. People don't have those experiences, and they both have, uh, Ray has that like intense loneliness. Her parents literally abandoned her. They left her, with a junk trader, and then she had to fend for herself. Kylo, with all of his, he had great mentoring. He learned from Luke. He learned from Snoke. His his mom and dad were some of the biggest figures in the galaxy. But even with all of that, he probably felt just as lonely as Rey actually was. So they have a lot of in common there. Um, and then I also want to comment on what you said about how they're, both equals. Um, yeah, they seem to be both just like equally powerful. As I was watching that battle where they team up, it's really hard to say who's doing better. There's some moments where Rey saves Kylo, but then Kylo seems to be fighting, two or three guys at once, where Rey is sometimes only fighting one guy. So it's really hard to say, but they both seem to be, uh, if not exactly equal, like really close. Like they're both like on par with each other.
Well, it kind of goes back to the whole point we kind of mentioned earlier. It's that classically trained versus,
Mm-hmm.
street kid. Street
Mm-hmm.
kid can keep up on certain playing fields, but when it comes to certain, higher level where you need some serious skills and
Mm-hmm.
you need some practice with it, and that's going to be the high ground for Kylo is that he has more classically trained abilities where, Rey is just kind of off the top of her head and just kind of fight with to
Mm-hmm.
survive. And both methods have heart and process and then a possibility to win. But at the end of the day, who's really going to be able to be on top? And it's always going to come back down to, like what you said, is the
Mm-hmm.
emotion behind it and why they're fighting. Why are they fighting against versus being on the same side? So there's a lot to look forward to with this next movie to see where that really goes.
Right, right. And I really liked their team up. It was sort of emotionally satisfying because they had this like slow burn, relationship where they slowly got to know each other, and then also just seeing them, really do really well and beat those guards together was awesome. And they seem to have really complementary abilities, even on a mental level, where Ray's strength is that once she commits to something, she's just all in. She just goes for it. She has no doubt about it, and she will just give it 100%. And then that's also her downside, where she can be very impulsive, and she can have all or nothing thinking. She had to find Luke. Luke was great. Luke's going to save the resistance. And then, oh, wait a second. Ben Solo told me you were mean to him and you were going to kill him. Oh, now you're bad, and I'm just going to go all out and attack you now. And then she thought, you know what, Ben does have good in him, so I'm going to fly over to Ben and Snoke, and I'm going to talk to him, and I'm going to convince him to be good again. So she can be really impulsive and have a lot of all or nothing thinking. And then Kylo can be the opposite, where he's really conflicted. He's really powerful and he's trained well, but he doesn't know if does he want to kill his mom? Does he not want to kill his mom? Does he want to kill Snoke, or is he bad and he wants to rule the galaxy with the dark side? But then when he does commit, like in that team up battle, then he really performs really well. So they have those complementary qualities
Skills.
to themselves. Yeah, skills. Yeah.
Well, I noticed that once Kylo dispatches with Snoke and they have that battle,
Mm-hmm.
and then the battle is to destroy the rebellion. Like they have them dead to rights on that planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see a different Kylo Ren at that point. He's like,
Right.
because Hux is like, what do we do now? The boss is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, he's not. I'm the boss.
Right.
And he kind of asserts himself, which I think is the first time he does it since we get to know him, even from the first movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and then he has that shoot that guy right there. He has that moment, and I don't know, maybe it's kind of metaphorical that he was fighting Luke and taking out all that aggression, and Luke did the most Jedi of all things and fought passively. He didn't what I expected Luke to do was to show up there, because I even stood up and cheered at that moment.
Yeah.
And I thought he was going to use the Force to crush those fat ats, is what I call them, the fat at-ats.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought he was just going to crush them with the Force. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but he did the most, meta thing by not fighting back. He just dodged everything,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And he gave and he once again surrendered to save his nephew. Do you think that was the message at that point?
Yeah, it's hard, because right before that, Luke said, he says to Leia, I'm gonna face him and I can't save him. But then on the other hand, then like you pointed out, he fights passively. He doesn't. I don't think he takes one swing at Kylo, and then he leaves him with a very Jedi message. So yeah, I do. I kind of. It's almost like offering help or offering somebody support, and then just kind of leaving and then letting them make their own decision. So he's kind of, yeah, he's on one hand he's saying I can't save him. There's nothing I could do about it. But then he is leaving that space and saying, look, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to destroy. I'm not going to smash those fat ants or whatever he calls them. But but I'm not going to let you hurt me. I'm not going to let you hurt the people I love. I'm not going to let you hurt the resistance. And go deal with that. Go off and be you, and hopefully you come to your senses. So it's kind of both.
And we can go on and on because there's a huge amount to unpack. But I want to do another session like this with you in the near future and talk even more about what the new movie's going to hit, because there's so many more things to talk about with this. It could go on for hours and hours. But we want to definitely let everybody know we're going to have Jason on a lot more frequently, because this kind of stuff is just fun to unpack these characters like this and really kind of bring them into a new kind of persona. So, Jason, I want to thank you for being able to come on again for the second time. Yay. And we are going to do a lot more of this with you, because this is seriously a lot of fun. You were just... Again, you make our show smarter just by being honest.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I feel smarter already. I'm about to put on a cardigan, get a pipe, and, watch Masterpiece Theater right now.
It's good times. It's good times. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming on. And Ernie, if you would give us one of the best Star Wars exits ever and let us hear it.
Peace out.
Peace out, everybody. Talk to you next time.
And that's another episode of Two Nerds and a Joke. Follow Robert and Ernie on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to their YouTube channel.